talking today about something that is covered quite a lot in news. This is the US elections.
Thank you.
And I thought it may be good for us to just have a little broad brush view of the issues involved and what is that system that they follow to elect the president. Now, in order to cover that, I've just put together a number of topics as well, which I consider to be relevant for us to have a nice Q&A, because in this sort of lecture, I'll probably be doing half an hour talk and then half an hour Q&A, so that we have a chance to, talk on various types of topics that I will be highlighting today. Okay, so the agenda today is going to be, now I'm going to sort of try and see how I can get this thing. Okay.
Screen share.
Okay, can you see that screen, all of you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to mute you all now.
I can't see it.
So that
It's not very good.
sorry, are you able to see it? June? Anyhow, what we're going to be talking about is two areas. Basically, the domestic.
The writing is a bit blurred. It's getting better.
Okay.
I can see it more or less.
All right, right. Good. Okay, what we are going to do is just run through this agenda for today and cover very briefly a lot of these topics that I think are relevant. And they're in two different categories. One is the domestic category, the other one international. And we are going to be looking at Trump, the way he has done his presidency in the last 4 years. It has been quite a change compared to the Obama. And we'll see a little bit in the following slides that I show you where they have differed quite a bit. So that's one area I'll be talking about. The other areas, of course, some of the things that we have seen in the press that has been covered. And I'll be talking basically the same type of stuff, very broad brush, but we can have a Q&A on this later on. Now, on the domestic front, we have, of course, a lot of issues which I've covered over here. And then on the international, we also have a lot of issues which I think are covered under these sort of headings. Now, we know that as far as Trump is concerned, he's following right after Obama, but in a very different path. I think we're all pretty familiar with that path that he has adopted, which is a much more, if you like, executive action-oriented type of role that he's playing, as opposed to something which is a bit more consensual that Obama was pursuing. So we have, I think, two distinct different styles. And we can also see, as a result of that, what it has, how it has impacted society in general, and also the international sort of audiences. So let me just go through each one of them and see what we can sort of look at, because I've got this sort of thing here. I'll have to do it like this. Can you see that? Okay, I'm going to put it onto a slideshow. Yeah. Okay. I think that sort of takes away a lot. Anyway, the areas that I think we ought to be sort of thinking about in terms of the two presidencies that on defense, both presidents have budgeted more for defense than any other administration since World War II. So you can see America, again, has embarked on a policy of really strategic sort of predominance or, if you like, strength. Essentially, that's the underlying power that they project, which is military power, and therefore their defense budgets are humongous. I think it's the order of about 700 billion, which is quite astonishing. So that's on the defense side. Then on the recession recovery, now when Obama came in, you remember there was this big financial problem at that time. And he, along with Gordon Brown, they got together and got the whole world behind them to sort out that financial crisis of 2008, I think it was. And so in that regard, Trump didn't have to do anything on the recession side. So he had something which was an economy which was already doing well on the track that Obama had set. And one other further thing that Obama had done was this healthcare. He came up with this Affordable Act, and that enabled 20 additional Americans who didn't have health insurance to have that taken up with pre-existing conditions. So that was a great triumph for Obama, and of course, it was a good thing for all of the country. Just imagine, you know, the conditions of people who couldn't afford to have health care, and there were lots of instances of even middle-class people when they went just bankrupt. So his policy that he adopted or brought in, after a lot of, if you like, resistance from Republicans, he did manage to succeed because he had these both houses which were Democrat in the first 2 years of his presidency. That is the House of Representatives and the Senate. So both of them were there. And despite him having both the houses, they still had to sort of make a lot of deals with the Republicans in order to get the whole thing through. So that was a big triumph. Now, what Trump has done in the meantime, since he has assumed power, at every turn, he has tried to undo that Obamacare. But then, of course, you know, what happened was the Senate, although was still Republican, the representative, the House was in the control of the Democrats. So there wasn't too much that he could do, but he tried his best. And now I think the position is that he wants to take the matter to the Supreme Court to undo this legislation that Obama has done on Obamacare. Now, if he comes back after this election, and with the Supreme Court having a Republican sort of majority, not Supreme Court, but if the Senate is still with the Republicans and the Supreme Court is still with who's, if you like, with the right-wing judges, because, you know, usually the Supreme Court has been more or less, you know, in the middle of the road type of representation, both Democratic and Republican type of judges. But now it has swung towards the Republicans quite a bit since since Trump has, in his tenure, managed to nominate 3 judges. And they're all those 3 which are at the moment Republican, with a Republican bias, and which are much more conservative. So we'll have to see now. If he comes back, it's going to be bad news for the American Supreme Court, because it would have swung to the right quite a bit. Now on the trade, Obama had introduced quite a lot of very far-reaching type of pacts You might be remembering some of those pacts are called the TTIP and TPAC. These were the trade pacts that he had agreed with for the Far East in order to bring all the countries together to try and have some unified type of approach to having an American market for their goods. But of course, China was excluded from that. It was at the point of being, passed, but then of course time was not on his side. So Obama, when he left, Trump came in, he abandoned that straight away. And the same thing goes for the TTIP, which is the cross-Atlantic trade pact that he had also sort of proposed. That was also abandoned. Now, instead, trade war has started with Trump in the presidency. Then also what Obama had done was to make sure, because of the financial crisis that they had at that time, to try and have more regulation on the banks. Now, Trump has trying to undo that regulation. So I'm not sure how far he has actually got with it, but his argument is that by undoing that regulation, the banks will be freer to pursue their business. Now, national debt, both presidents have had an increase in national debt, but as far as this pandemic is concerned, it's gone out of the roof now. So that's a big, big issue at the moment. And of course, one of the things that is also very important from Obama's time is the climate change. He was supporting the multilateral approach to climate change, and he was part of that Paris Agreement. Whereas Trump, as you know, he pulled out of that. America pulled out of the Paris Agreement, and it's going its own way. But thankfully, these states like California and some of the bigger ones, they still adhere to those policies that they have adopted, believing in climate changing and doing something about it. So you can see, that summarizes basically the different positions. Now here, that's putting it in a pictorial form. We had Obama. He had another very good laurel under his belt, if you like, the nuclear agreement with Iran, because that enabled Iran to stop enriching fissile material and not go towards making the bomb. So that was all in place. Obama had signed it, and the Europeans had signed it. And the moment when Trump came in, he abandoned that. And now Iran is going its own way. They've started to sort of enrich uranium, and they'll very likely go and make a bomb, without too much of a problem. So it was a real backstep for basically Trump. Trump did that at the instigation of Israel, because Israel is an arch enemy of Iran. And now that they have got Iran back onto the path of the bomb, as it were, although they don't admit it to it, it's very likely that it's not a good decision. Also on the job of the, if you like, environment, he has appointed people to the EPA department, Environmental Protection Agency, people who are not they don't believe in climate change. They don't believe that it's unaffected by man's sort of interference in nature. All this fossil fuels and all that and warming, they don't believe in that. So it's headed by that sort of a guy, and therefore that's another backward step. That's the big bankers mentioned you. One of the other things about the banking sort of regulation is the Obama administration had given some regulation that protected the small banks as well. Now Trump is coming to take out the protections of the smaller banks as well. Now, he got this, and he received the Nobel Prize right the time he came in, because I think everybody knew his mindset. And then, of course, he ended the recession of 2008. So all very good accomplishments. This is just a little picture of, I thought I might put up so that you might see what Obamacare, it's graduated in a way. The basic thing gives you 60% of the coverage. And as you progress further up, you can have a lot more full coverage. And of course, this premiums that you pay depends on the age that you are, the income you have, the family size, where you are. So it's basically a much more fairer system of giving insurance to people at the lower end of the economic sort of strata. Now, this I put up simply because it shows a little bit of a mindset of Trump. Now, if you look at this thing here, the mindset of Trump, he's very keen on tweets. Every day he shoots out all sorts of tweets because he feels that the press or the media doesn't favor his sort of narratives. So he approaches the public directly through these tweets. And most of his dialogue has been recorded here that covers, say, nuclear. The word nuclear has been used so many times that is shown in red. There you have the North Korean one, which is also on nuclear. And where the real sort of issues are concerned about nuclear sort of disarmament and all that, he hasn't shown much of enthusiasm for that. Okay, we've seen that one. We've seen that one. Okay, this I thought I'd put up simply to show you how his standing is in the world when it comes to global leadership, or for that matter, leaders of any country. Angela Merkel, when you mention that name, instills a lot of confidence in the public. So that's about 42%. Okay, 30% saying no confidence, and then some no shows here, don't knows. So you can see Angela Merkel has been a very, very good leader, not only for Germany, but for the whole world. Xi Jinping, in fact, although less popular than Angela Merkel, certainly is more popular than Trump and of Putin. So you can see these numbers in the green. That's the approval rating of those leaders, if you like. So interesting sort of global perspective, if you like, on Trump. Okay, here I'm going to be talking very quickly about the election process, because elections are going to be next week in USA. And the system that they have is not exactly what we have. We have a system called first past the post, and the majority gets to be the party in power. In USA, it's slightly different. They have three, if you like, parts to the whole power, if you like, expression. One is the president himself, and the other two are the House, which is like the House of Commons, and the Senate, which is like the House of Lords in our case, but the senators are elected. So everybody is elected in a way, and how they elected is the process, which I'll explain to you very briefly. So here, I'm not sure what this is here. I'm getting okay, both candidates compete for the Electoral College. Now, Electoral College is a place where you have, once you've done the basic sort of elections by voting to a particular party or to a particular candidate, these votes are called popular votes. They then sort of get assigned to something called the Electoral College, that each state has a certain number of senators that are assigned to those states. Now, going back into, so there is the Senate that gets elected. There's the House of Representatives that gets elected. And then, of course, the president gets elected based on the Electoral College. Now, what is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is the number of representatives that are given to each state. And there are 52 states, and there are a certain number of senators are given to those states. Depending on, it does depend on the population of that state. Now, historically, why that happened was that when the union was being formed, the states were were bribed, if you like, to join the union by giving them the same number of senators, then regardless of the population. So you could have in California, with a huge population, they'll have 2 senators, whereas Wisconsin, which is a very tiny state, or low population state, it will have also 2 senators. Now, senators are important simply because when they occupy the Senate, they are the ones who approve a lot of legislation and appoint a lot of officials as well. So in that sense, it's a skewed system in a way. Now, at the last election, when Hillary was running, she collected more votes overall in the country than Trump did. But in the Electoral College, because of the preponderance of emphasis that is given to the Midwestern states, Trump was stronger in that, and therefore he managed to collect more of those votes from those Electoral College than Hillary did. So that's how he became a president, despite the fact that his popular vote was less than Hillary's. So he lost by about 3 million, I think, roughly, overall, 3 million votes in the whole country, but he nevertheless became the president. So here we are. This is the electoral votes allocation to each state. So what you need is 270 out of 538 are needed to win the presidency. So these electoral votes here, if you like, are having, here Texas has 38, California 55, Florida 29, depending on the size of this hexagon here. That's how they have that. Okay, the Congress is made up of 2 houses. One, as I said, which is the Senate. The other one is the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives at the moment is Democrat, and the House, the Senate is Republican. Now, who are the Republicans? How can we sort of define them? These are known as the Grand Old Party, and they stood for lower taxes. They still stand for that. Gun rights, tighter restrictions on immigration, and support for this party tends to be stronger in the rural parts of America. So here you have all these past presidents who came because of the support that they received from the conservative-minded electorate at that time: Bush, Reagan, and Nixon. Now, who are the Democrats? The Democrats are people who have essentially, okay, is defined by liberal. They're a bit more liberal sort of party. And they have, liberal views on civil rights, immigration, climate change. And they believe that the government should play a bigger role in people's lives, like providing health insurance. And the support for this party tends to be from urban parts of America, the big cities. And you have these presidents like John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama from that party. So you can see they are a bit more, if you like, socialistic in their perspective, although the word socialism is really sort of regarded as a bad word in USA. Anybody who's called a socialist is regarded as not a patriot of America. Okay, now why are we looking at the Supreme Court? Now, Supreme Court defines itself as one who says the Constitution of America is what it says it is. So if you like, what we are seeing is a document which needs to be interpreted by a body, and that body is the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court interprets what's in the Constitution. And they bring in the amendments through legislation as they progress since the very first days of the American democracy. Now, what has happened recently is that at the last election, George Bush and Al Gore were very close in terms of votes. And you might have remembered the case of Florida at that time, the hanging chads and the floating this and the floating that, which was really a way of trying to minimize the popular vote, especially in Florida, because you had a lot of Hispanics and a lot of black people there as well. And they, I think, wanted to vote for Democrats at that time, but they were prevented by so many little tricks by the American sort of governor at that time, who I think was George, anyway, it's one of those Republican party's governors. Say they made life difficult for the people, ordinary people to vote. So the count was very close, and the matter then went up to the Supreme Court. And then, of course, it was just a matter of time before the Supreme Court said, yeah, Mr. Bush has won and Al Gore has lost. They just took a decision because at that time it was, again, a Republican biased type of Supreme Court. It's worth mentioning here that we don't have a court that has to interpret our constitutions, because in UK we don't have a constitution. So nobody can sort of really take a position hard and fast. And what the judges in our UK recently appointed Supreme Court is that they look at the situation and then they pass judgment. So no particular party has control over them. Now, another thing that this election is going to be, again, arguing if the matter goes to the Supreme Court, if the voting is very close, is how sort of accurate are the postal ballots? Because already a lot of comments have started that, one can be misusing the ballots in some way or the other. And therefore, it could be a point of contention if the matter goes to the Supreme Court, if the election is a close, as it was in the case of even Bush and Al Gore. Now, some states allow for postal ballots, but not all. You can see some states are accepting the coronavirus as a valid reason to use ballots, but not all of them are at the moment. So in states which don't accept ballots because of the coronavirus, you have to go and be in queues for hours on end. which seems again to be trying to put people off from voting. And if there are fewer people voting, it's to the advantage of the Republicans. And that is quite clear from the previous sort of actions that the Republicans have taken to try and block the black vote and any new registrants coming in. They put all sorts of conditions like an address. Like one of the cases was that in the reservations where the Indians were, they put a condition that unless you have an address, you can't vote. The Red Indians didn't have an address because they were living in a reservation. So they weren't given the vote for a while. But fortunately, I think after some time, they managed to get that vote. But these are the types of things. And then, of course, there's the other thing about literacy tests. These are all the gimmicks that Republicans have thought of in their own states to try and block the ordinary people from voting. Okay, we talked about this electoral college. It's useful to also know that it usually reflects the popular vote, but it has failed for 2 in the last 5 elections. So it's not all that sort of foolproof in a way. These are 2 guys who have been the subject of a lot of talk. Biden is there as well, but Obama has been used as a crutch for Trump for pointing out, saying that he wants to undo everything that Obama did. This is the legacy of Obama that he wants to undo. One of them is that horrible Iran deal, he calls it. And he says, has broken the system, and all sorts of nonsensical type of arguments he has been sort of putting forward. In fact, one of the things that happened just the other day is that there is a program in USA called 60 Minutes, where they are asked, the candidates are asked questions, and Trump did not have answers to some questions, especially when it came to pandemic and so on. He just got up and left. So Obama referred to that in his talk just the other day, saying that if he doesn't have, some answers to ordinary questions, how can we accept him as a president who has to sort of deal with very difficult issues and with difficult people? So you can see the caliber of Trump not being able to even manage the simplest of political sort of questioning. Okay, one of the things that has suffered also is the US-Cuba bilaterals as well. When Trump came in, he undid a lot of recognition that Obama had given to Cuba. And some of the sanctions were being lifted. Now he's gone back to it. So that's the Iran deal, which I think was a very bad mistake on Trump's part. Okay. So he's committed to that. Now, what are we saying here? Okay, that I think we've already covered. Excuse me. I'll call you back. I'm giving my talk. Sorry. So big achievement of Obama. That is at stake in these elections of that is currently going to be next week. If Trump comes back, we can write off Obamacare's health policies that he introduced, which was a very well thought out, good sort of facility and for the Americans. And if Trump comes back again, then we can forget about the Clean Air Act and also no agreements at the international level. And then he will have, of course, that issue about Obama's healthcare taken to the Supreme Court, and probably because the Supreme Court has shifted to the right, they will also bring it down, I think. It's bad news. So that's again about the protection. Okay, racial justice. Now, since he has come in, there has been a lot more open talk about racist policies. And what Trump has done is took repeated steps to reverse Obama administration to call out institutional racism. And that's why you have this Black Lives Matters protests that are taking place and are being violently sort of suppressed. Okay, I want to sort of just look at a little bit of what we can consider to be the impact of, I think I'll skip this particular one. I'll go back to this one here. Right. Sorry, oh, I think I'll just move that to see what I'm doing. Okay, I want to show basically the difference between Trump and Biden. Biden is the candidate who's running against Trump, and we can see that there is quite a lot of difference between them. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I've just started to use this new type of software and I'm going all over the place here. Okay. So this is a question about the economic policy that is going to be pursued by the two sort of candidates. Now, one is suggesting that infrastructure needs a big stimulus in order to create jobs and all that. And Biden is saying he's going to spend 1.3 trillion. And Trump has said he's going to spend 2 trillion, although he doesn't say how. Now, Biden has given a breakdown. He says in 10 years, he's going to spend 400 billion on energy, clean energy, 100 billion on schools, 50 on bridges and roads, 20 on broadband, 10 on poverty areas. So he's broken down, and there is a definite sort of good sign there for everybody to be able to at least know if he comes in what he's going to do. As opposed to that, on jobs, what Biden has said is that infrastructure spending, he's going to be funding programs such as new market tax credits, community development, financial institutions, so on. So essentially what he's doing is he's going to increase the taxes a little and increase the minimum wage as well. So in a nutshell, that's what it means. Whereas what Trump is saying is that he's going to give tax cuts to companies, which will make them, in fact, be more profitable or have more money to spend, which they can then give to shareholders or reinvest. So essentially, that's the two difference you can see. Biden's program is to invest in the people and give them facilities and increase the taxation a bit, whereas Trump wants to cut taxes and then sort of have fewer facilities given to people. So he's going to spend more on targeted areas which are poor. Now he wants to keep taxation rates low, which he says is going to help businesses and provide that as an incentive as well. But that remains to be seen as to how much actual money will end up in big bank balances of billionaires and so on, which it favors. Trump favors that type of logic. Now, this is a case of having the impact of these two policies on two companies. Here, I'll put up another one here. So here we are seeing In the case of a Boeing, like Boeing company, the impact of Biden's policies as opposed to Trump's policies. In the case of Boeing, if they are given some sort of a tax cut, they make something like 20 billion additional in the, on the sort of positive side of money. And they can use some of this money to give that to the, as dividends to the shareholders. So you can see it's a clear sort of win for big companies to have Trump coming in and giving them that type of a deal. So again, summarizing, Trump corporate tax cuts, he's reduced corporate levels from 35 to 21, which is quite a substantive cut. So a lot of big companies are very, very happy with him. Now, Biden also wants to, he wants to increase corporate rate tax, but from 21 to 28, not a very big one, not back to 35. And of course, he's talking about also introducing a 15% minimum tax on companies, regardless of what they do, so that they don't escape from paying taxes. And also Trump is going to cut top capital gains tax from 23 to 15. So again, he's targeting sort of wealthy people with assets. And he's going to keep capital gains the same, except for those persons earning over 1 million. And they will then pay the normal 37% tax, which they pay as income tax. So essentially, we'll go through that because this is repeating the same thing. Now, just talking a little bit about what are the chances of Democrats coming in. Now, in terms of this, I can see they've got a 99% chance of winning. That's what the people are saying at the moment. And the opinion polls, the Republican, not as great. Now this is, again, the, sorry, I had to use this software because it's not the best that I could sort of, yeah. So the chances are that 3 out of 4 people are going to be voting for the Democrats, which takes it to 77%, and in case of Republicans, only a quarter. So the chances of Biden coming in are much better, and not only is the chance of him becoming president better, but he will also carry the Senate and the Republicans, which means that it's going to be a real good news for all the Democrats. So at that point, I'm going to stop my talk and we'll go for Q&A, okay? Okay, we go. I stopped sharing screen now. Okay. Now I'm giving a bit more time for Q&A because it's a very big subject and it's going to be on us to be able to, I'm going to unmute everybody now. Okay, so let's have a bit more, if you like, Q&A, so that we are able to at least talk about things which could be of importance to us to look at next week's elections in USA.
One of the things I'm very interested in, only because I've got a friend in the States who raised it, is about the postal vote. Because they started fiddling around with the postal vote and they started fiddling around with sorting machines. They started to remove post mailboxes, they call them, from street corners. Okay, they're aware that a lot of people will not be able to go and vote. They needed you to have registered a month before. Okay, there was a cut-off date, and if you didn't register a month before, which meant you had to go out, okay, to do that, you couldn't actually register for a vote. There was a big hue and cry going on about their postal votes. I'd be really interested to find how many people voted by post in the States when we have the result. And also the other thing was overseas people have an opportunity to vote as well, but they don't count those votes unless there is a very tight thing like there was with the Florida thing. They, you know, if there's it's a walkover, there's no point in counting those votes.
Yeah, I think the pity is that the Republican Party is the one who messes around trying to suppress the vote, because they know that if everybody were to vote, they will not come into power too often.
Yes.
And therefore, they do all these types of tricks. Let's hope that, you know, Biden is saying that if he were to win, he is going to institute a lot of reform, starting from the Supreme Court itself. The Supreme Court is at the moment about 7 justices, I think, or 9. He might want to increase that number, which I think is probably a good sort of thought there. He's going to appoint a commission, and then they will also look at some of these tricks that the Republicans are playing, even going to court for various types of to inhibit the popular vote coming through easily. So if he comes in, I think we can expect a lot of reform in this area.
I do still think that Trump's going to get in. I'm an uneasy feeling that he is going to get in again. I think he really appeals to middle America.
Yeah, but even in middle America, the polls show that Biden is leading. But it could be, again, like last time, because
Like
Hillary was leading, and people who are voting for Trump, they don't tell their preferences to the polls. That's why the polls go wrong.
Correct.
So
Agreed.
let's hope that doesn't happen this time.
I
Ruth.
I fear that I don't trust Trump. I fear he will get up to anything. And also, if he does lose, I'm worried about violence, because he's not going to go easily. He's going to really cause problems.
Yeah, I think if the thing is close, it will end up in the Supreme Court, and they'll argue it. And the other thing that he can also be doing is that just before elections, he could do all sorts of mischief, which is like saying that he's needed and for some emergency or whatever, by starting a war somewhere.
Anything's possible.
That's right.
He's a loose cannon. That's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's hope that what we are seeing is, you see, like last time, a lot of pollsters and also the media, they are saying that we want to be a bit more careful this time because we got it wrong last time. So that caution, I think, is going to make them more sort of, less free with their opinions. So even with that thought in mind, they are still putting Biden ahead and the Democrats ahead. So that gives me some comfort.
Watch this space. I feel very uneasy.
Yeah, Jim.
Afternoon. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Me. Yeah. You know that chart you put up where you had the popularity of Angela Merkel and all the other major leaders? Do you know what's actually driving people to feel that way out of the major issues you put up? What's the major issue which is driving the ratings?
You mean in US polls or the world leadership?
Merkel.
In the US. So out of all those issues you talked about, what's the main driver of the unpopularity?
Well,
is it climate change or
Well, first of all, the unpopularity is because of the pandemic, because 220,000 people have died because, USA has been not very competent to deal with it. And their image the world over has suffered because USA is regarded as one of those very competent societies and gets things done and so on. And what Trump has shown is that they can mess things up really badly.
Okay, so that's a big driver. That's the
Yeah,
biggest
that's
driver.
one. And the other thing is the reputation that he's collecting worldwide is that he is not one who thinks about other people. He's thinking about himself. And secondly, about his country, although he says it's his country, but it's actually his own empire, his own wealth, and his own influence. So ultimately, he's regarded as just a very, what they call a transactional type of person. You give me this, I'll give you that type of idea, and not having the general interest at all.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, Nimi.
Hi. The thing that concerns me here is the things we're learning from Trump and his dishonesty and the way they carry on. So here we have Boris supported by or guided by Dominic Cummings, and they are, sort of wanting to do things which are similar to the way they're done in the US. Now, on the main thing that I worry about is the Supreme Court, because our court has always been non-partisan. So the judiciary is independent. It's got nothing to do with being Labour or Conservative or whatever, and we can trust them. But Boris has been desperate to take any power away from the court just because they decided against him. And it worries me that this country has given them a mandate. He's got an 80 majority, so they can pass any laws they want to. And the way they're going about doing it is pretty scary. Similarly with the civil service as well. So in the States, again, it's all very partisan. So when they change government, everyone sort of seems to change as well. Whereas here, at least when we had the civil servants, they stay, and they are again meant to be non-partisan, and there is some continuity. So the thing that's worrying me is that if Trump wins, and again, you're absolutely right, no one knows what he's going to do to try and win this. All the pundits are saying, although Biden is ahead, that we still don't know what Trump is going to do at the last minute to somehow sort of, win this election, so no one can be sure. But I'm more worried about the effect his winning is going to have on us, because we're leaving the EU. We're desperate for America sort of, to look down on us as being sort of friendly and copying them, I think all to our own detriment. So that's my big concern.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right that we should be concerned about ourselves as well. We are in a situation where I think we are looking to America, with Trump being there, as giving us a good deal. Because if that does happen, then Europe is going to give us a very bad deal.
Mm-hmm.
And Europe is our biggest partner. So this thing about getting concessions from USA, simply because Trump likes to talk things in the way that he does, it may not actually, in my opinion, it may not come about. Because the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi has said that they're going to sort of scrutinize every deal that is going to be made between UK and USA.
Yeah.
And one other thing that Biden will do if he comes to power is he will resurrect the TTIP, the Atlantic sort of pact, the deal that was prepared by Obama.
Mm-hmm.
And also the TTIP, I think it's TTP and TTIP. Anyway, one concerns the Pacific, and the other one concerns the Atlantic and the countries around them. Both were, I think, very good for world business and for America. But the moment Trump came in, he abandoned both of them, with the result that Europe now doesn't sort of, look at USA as a reliable ally or partner in anything. And if UK goes behind in some way to try and undermine Europe, I think there's going to be a lot, there's a cost to UK, I think. So we'll have to see. If Biden comes in, UK probably will be better off. With Trump, although one is expecting a better deal from Trump, but on the whole, UK will be coming badly off with Europe and others.
Yes, but that again all depends on the Irish issue, because the Democrats are not at all happy about, us playing fast and loose with breaking our agreement with the EU as far as Ireland is concerned, and the Democrats are taking that very badly. So, clearly any hope of an agreement, of a deal is looking pretty shoddy. But the other thing is that everyone is, tries to have good deals with the markets that are nearest to them. So, TTIP and all the rest of it. America has NAFTA with Canada and Mexico and so on. Australia has deals with the countries near where it is. But what we've done is we are leaving the nearest market and the biggest one and trying to find markets in the rest of the world. And I don't really understand. And I've never, the other thing I don't know, maybe I just missed it, was when, they were talking about all these opportunities. I don't know if they ever itemized those opportunities to say, look, if we leave the EU, this is what we will lose, but look at everything we gain.
Okay.
Other than just hearing about opportunities, I never actually saw what they were, and we're clearly not seeing any of them now. So, we've been suckered, like I think the Americans are suckered by Trump, and we keep following, and we've got Boris in number 10 Downing Street. It's very depressing, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's the whole Brexit thing itself was a very emotional thing, not well thought out at all. And that has brought these people into power here. And Trump also a very emotional thing that has happened there, that brought him in. Because, immigration and all that are very sore subjects in every country. And they can be played up no end to turn the people around, put the fear in them. And the real sort of culprits are really not those types of issues, but really, I keep mentioning this time and again, it's automation that has taken away the jobs and has shifted the economic balance. And right now, what we are pursuing are policies which are very inward looking, especially in terms of USA. And there was a program on radio, I think yesterday, about how the Chinese and USA are two different countries following different types of policies, and the Chinese seem to be gaining. And they're moving a lot more ahead in the various areas that they have decided to move into. So the technological sort of lead is a risk of being lost by USA, and the allies, USA risks losing the goodwill of allies. So we have, I think, a clear case of how a bad leadership can bring the country down, and this is why I think voting, as they say, is so important. We've got to bring in the right type of people in. Well, we'll see. We'll see soon. Next week, I think we'll know whether we're headed for troubled times or good times.
Hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. I don't think we will. My American friends were telling me that they've been taking down the posters, the signs outside people's houses and breaking them, and they're very emotional about it. And all the gun shops are sold out. Everybody's bought guns.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm.
So you know, I hate to think what's going to happen.
My friends over there are preparing for street fights, literally. If I mean, they're really worried.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very worrisome.
Yeah.
But you think that'll get worse if Trump remains in power?
Definitely.
Because you see, what he might, what the supremacists and all that may do is, if Biden comes into power, they will bring out the guns, I think, on some pretext or the other.
Mm.
You know, so it's bad news for both, either one of them coming in.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't look for good times to happen too readily. Anyway, I don't want to leave you with a very pessimistic sort of picture, but I would say that regardless of the market, the president, the market, they say, is still going to do well, and stock market is doing very well. But I have my own doubts, of course, there. But it is at the all-time high. And of course, we have to see whether that continues. So at least there are lots of people who are looking at the stock market and taking comfort in that at least something is in demand. The shares are in demand. But I don't know really to what extent that'll be the case for very long.
Yeah, Shafiq, I still don't really understand the Electoral College, and you know how is the popular vote allocated to the people in the Electoral College? So if you, as you said, California has the largest number, I think, but so how does it translate from the popular vote into the number of votes that go on from the Electoral College to the
Well, I'm not actually sure.
Okay.
I know that the states, they each of them have two senators. That's why we have a limit of what, about 102 or something like in the Senate, because every state, no matter how big or how small, they each get two. That's where the sort of imbalance comes about in government, because the Senate has so much power in blocking all sorts of legislation, like even appointing senior officials to head all sorts of departments. So in a way, the weaker states have a lot more power than they deserve. Now, those people who have lots of votes, they seem to have, I think, some allocation. I'm not sure on what basis that the Electoral College gets the actual votes. I think my own sort of thinking was that if there is a majority of one party or the other in the state, that whole state has votes go to that party or the other.
Because that's what happened with the Gore and Bush thing, that they gave them all to Bush.
Yeah.
And I think they also stopped counting the votes. They hadn't even completed it. But again, because the Republicans seem to have a majority, I don't know whether that was in the Supreme Court, you know, by one judge, they decided to stop doing that and handed it to Bush. And just imagine how different the world would be had Gore won.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Are there plans to change the whole system, the electoral system, and to abolish this electoral college thing? Do the Democrats want to change it? No.
No, at the moment they're not talking about it. They're talking about setting up a commission to look at the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court nominations have been really abused by Trump. not allowing Obama to sort of nominate his 10 months before the elections. And yet in the last 2 weeks, they're preparing to put one of their own judges because of this election. So you can see the injustice and the abuse that is taking place in good practices here. And that commission, I think, is going to look at that and being able to do something better than what they have at the moment.
Are you saying that the only way to become a senator is through electoral college votes?
No, you get a senator, gets elected by like any other, you have to vote for them.
So how does, I'm interested in the weighting of the houses. So
Well,
how,
every state gets 2 senators, every state, regardless of small or big.
yeah. So
That's why you have a Senate which is only made up of 100 odd sort of senators.
so what has the electoral college is what, if every state gets 2 senators, then you can't become a senator unless you've been.
Yeah, well, what it seems to be the electoral college is the Senate and electoral college is 2 different things. The electoral college has to do with the number of votes that are cast by people, and they, if the majority of them vote for either Democrats or Republicans in that state, then all of the votes of that state go to that party. You know, supposing if California had even say a 60-40 distribution of Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't matter because Democrats are 60%, they will get all the electoral votes.
So are you saying that therefore there'll be 2
No, the senators will always be 2 for the state, and the electoral votes are different. They are the votes that need to be cast in order to elect the president.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see? I don't see.
I remember I used to work at the US Embassy, and I've worked on election night, and they have this big map. And as the votes come in, the states light up. You know, when it reaches the agreed amount, they're turned red or blue. And you can see it on the map. So presumably that's what Shafiq was saying. You know, when a number of votes come in, they're either Democrat or Republic.
Yeah. So essentially, I think it's different in a way to our system. Our system is just, it's not proportional. You know, we don't have a proportional system, nor do the Americans have. I think the Europeans have a proportional system. I think in Germany,
Yes.
I think we had a proportional system for our European elections also, where a certain number of people are given one sort of representative, so that if you have a large population, then you get more representatives. I think in the case of UK, we had about 20 representatives given to us to sit in European Parliament or thereabouts, and somebody like Germany, who's slightly bigger than UK, has more sitting in UK Parliament, in European Parliament. So that's proportional representation, which some say is better, but we don't have that here.
But I think they are planned. Labour wants to change it, doesn't it?
Yeah, there was, I think, even when the coalition government was there with the Lib Dems, they tried to bring in some sort of proportional type of voting, but that didn't get through, you know, so it just failed. So we're back to the same old thing, which is just first past the post.
Unless the Labour Party does so badly again that it might put its voice behind proportional representation.
Yes.
But so long as 2 parties dominate, it's in both the major parties' interest to just to keep the first past the post. arrangement.
Yeah, they do all sorts of funny business as well when they're in power. I know my area over here got lines redrawn, so we got thrown into with King's Cross, whereas we were before part of Hampstead.
Yeah, well, gerrymandering has happened over the centuries. They have redrawn the boundaries on a regular basis, hoping to get
Some advantage.
Much good it did them.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it did the Labour Party good in Hampstead and in Hampstead and Kilburn. But there we go.
Yeah, we've become Labour as well here in King's Cross and Holborn, I think. We're part of that.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. Fortunately, our Labour MPs are not as bad as some others. So, and are both, I think, sorry, I'm a Liberal Democrat, but we could have worse MPs.
Yeah.
They're both people of principle, which isn't always the case.
Yeah. My MP is Keir Starmer.
Mhm.
He was better than that.
Congratulations.
Yes. Well, shall we, on that good note, maybe someday he'll be Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Shafiq. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Zoe. Thank you.